have Jim and Kara from Columbus Recreation and Parks Department and Friends of the Lower Olentangy Watershed, or FLOW for short. You guys with me?
I'm here. This is Kara.
Yes, hello.
Awesome. All right, if you guys want to go ahead and give a brief overview of what your organization does and who it serves, we'll get started.
Sure, I can start with that. So like you said, I am with Friends of the Lower Olentangy Watershed, or FLOW. To just rehash our mission directly, we exist in order to keep the Olentangy River and its tributaries clean and safe for all to enjoy. And we do this through public education, volunteer activities, and coordination with local decision makers.
That is great. And I'm Kara Johnson. I'm Development Coordinator for Columbus Recreation and Parks Department. And our mission is and continues to be to connect the residents of Columbus through the power of creativity, wellness, and nature. And we do this in a variety of different ways. Our goal is to offer services to Columbus residents. That looks like community recreation centers providing summer meals, tutoring, sports, to therapeutic recreation for residents with diverse abilities. And we ensure that our parks and green spaces remain safe and pristine. So that's kind of us in a really quick nutshell there.
Awesome, thank you guys. Our third panelist actually just joined. Thank you for joining us. She's from the Bethany Bronzeville Community Garden. If you want to go ahead and give a brief overview of what your organization does and who it serves, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm really appreciative of being able to be a part of this panel. And the reason I was late was because we had a volunteer crew assisting us this morning, and we had a project that we really needed to complete, so we went ahead and did it. But the Bethany Bronzeville Community Garden is attached to Bethany Presbyterian Church, the only African-American Presbyterian church in Columbus, Ohio. And its purpose is to supplement the foods that generally come from the Mid-Ohio Food Bank and other resources in Central Ohio for the community lunch program that is 15 years old and serves approximately 75 to 150 people every week. So I'll stop there. I'm sure there will be some more questions, but we can pick those up later.
Perfect, awesome, thank you. Yeah, we'll just keep rolling here with our next question. What does your organization do to promote a healthy environment?
I can start here again. So obviously, since we are a watershed organization, promoting a healthy environment is really at the core of what we do. And we specifically do this from the perspective of clean water, obviously. But to keep, or rather to make the Olentangy River clean, we take what's referred to as a watershed approach. And so this means that we don't necessarily just work within the river itself, but we also work in all of its tributaries and then on all of the land that drains to those. As it happens, many of the things that we do to benefit water quality, they usually have multiple benefits. So for example, we plant trees to limit stormwater runoff, but this also provides wildlife habitat, sequesters atmospheric carbon, that has significant cooling effects, and so on.
Right. Well, as a community garden, we are not able to be certified as organic, but we try as much as possible to practice organic principles. So we do not use excessive chemicals. We try to compost and mulch, and we utilize permaculture principles so that we utilize whatever rainfall there is. We structure the land with swales and berms so that the rainfall is collected and made accessible to the plants. With companion planting, we try to ensure that the plants that grow next to each other are ones that enhance or attract beneficial insects that will assist in deterring the harmful insects. We try to plan using succession planning so that the plants that come before and after each other as we rotate are beneficial and that they add value to each other, whether because of their growing culture or because of the microbicides or nutrients that are left in the soil as an enhancement. We also have structured the garden so that on the outside, and it's the size of a city lot, on the outside we have a perimeter of pollinators, and these are flowers that attract birds and bees and butterflies, and then they come to the flowers, but then they also are used to pollinate our vegetables. And so it's beneficial in terms of looking at it, but it's also beneficial in terms of assisting in growing healthy crops. Finally, we try to lead by example. So we don't have individual plots so that families in the neighborhood can garden there, but we encourage people to share their questions with us through another program that I'll talk about later. We do work directly with individual families. And so we encourage families to see what we do and try to follow within their own homes as well.
Perfect. And then from Columbus Recreation and Park standpoint, we plant trees. Right now we're in the process of implementing an urban forestry master plan. Right now our tree canopy in Columbus is about 22%, which is a little bit below Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, other comparable cities. So if we are implementing this urban forestry master plan, the goal is to decrease the summertime temperature in Columbus, which would be nice. It helps with air quality, obviously. And then Columbus Recreation and Parks also has 30 pollinator gardens, the importance of that just mentioned. But we're working to restore the whetstone prairie with native plants. We also have 22 of those Kogo bike stations, if you've seen those around. That's ours, and that's helpful for the environment as well. We also conserve wetlands. 4 were conserved in 2019. Our volunteer program works to make parks more beautiful, remove trash, especially in this year. Our parks have been very heavily used due to COVID-19. So lots of litter in the parks, unfortunately, but we've had a really good litter cleanup effort. Over 4,000 trees were planted in streets and in parks last year. So we had to cancel a lot of our Earth Day events, unfortunately, this year due to the environment that we're in. So the hope is that we can get some trees in the ground come this fall. So that from an environmental standpoint is what we do to promote a healthy environment, but also kind of more broadly, Columbus Recreation and Parks has a lot of resources for families. If anybody's lacking a job or needs personal hygiene products or needs food, we're a resource for that too. And that helps with mental health and social health and physical health, all those important aspects of overall well-being as well.
Awesome, thank you guys. And I think if we just keep that order, Jim, Julia Lynn, Kara, just to eliminate any confusion, that would be solid. And then I just want to remind our attendees, if you have any questions as we're going through the panel, go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. But next up, we have what can we do, for example, lifestyle changes to take care of the environment relative to your guys' organizations?
Sure. I have trouble kind of providing a single answer to this, I guess. So for perhaps an unsatisfying answer, I would probably say just increase your own awareness. I think it's Socrates who believed that to be virtuous, you must have knowledge. And whether or not that bears relevance today, I think it does have relevance to kind of environmental stewardship. And I think essentially of the kind of the long list of potential things that you can do to change your lifestyle to one that's both effective and something that you're actually likely to begin implementing, I'd say just learn more. Learn more about your water use, about where your water comes from, where it goes. And this applies to all the resources and products you use, I think. I believe that once you start to understand that water going into those sewer grates along the street goes directly into the river, that after heavy rain events, sometimes the waste that you flush down your toilet will actually go into the river. And that the cost to clean the water you drink is directly proportional to the quality of water that needs cleaning. I think once you start to understand things like that, you'll start to recognize ways that you can make perfectly manageable changes to your lifestyle that make you as an individual more regenerative for the environment and perhaps less extractive.
It's interesting how with COVID-19, people instinctively knew what to do. And so many people turned to gardening as a form of therapy for some, but also as a sense of being able to contribute something healthy in a time of such crisis. Or, you know, with this mystery virus, people are like, well, I don't know, I have no idea where it is or where it's from, and we were cleaning everything and we don't know how it's transferred. But if there is some, you know, piece of the earth, if there's some corner of my environment that I can be responsible for and that I can have as a healthy component to my life, well, then I'm going to do it. And so it was interesting how so many gardeners who, and really, and urban farmers, people are really quite serious about what they're doing, really had ran into difficulties because so many of the regular supply sources were depleted because of an individual interest now in gardening. And so now for us, it's been, how do we continue that in a more sustained way? And, you know, Jim talked about education. We also have the Bronzeville Agri Academy as part of our aspect of healthy living in Bronzeville. And it was to have been a course at the Ohio State University Community Extension Center. And then, of course, when it closed in March, we went online like everyone else. And now, this afternoon, I'm already starting the second session of the Agri Academy because we had such interest in the first. And then people started doing their gardens, and people said, well, now I've got questions. I don't know whether I'm doing this right or what can I do better. And so we started the second session of the Bronzeville Agri Academy. And so it's really a way of sharing information. And what I encourage everybody to realize is everybody has something to share. Even people say, well, I'm a first time, but still, whatever your experience has been, whatever success you have, share that, because we can all learn from each other.
I think that's great. We certainly can all learn from each other. And as Jim also alluded to, I think it's great to educate yourself about the things that you can do at home. But just to add to that, volunteerism in your local park is also great. Use reusable bags if you can, rather than plastic bags. And I can speak from experience picking up litter in our parks. Please don't litter. That's a very simple thing that you can do. Don't litter. And I think that's all that I would add.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. I know you guys just mentioned the education aspect. We have a question in the Q&A that kind of segues to that specifically, whether you guys have any community outreach or programs that specifically focus on that education aspect.
Yes. Yeah, obviously a lot's changed with everything going on right now, but historically we would typically put on monthly educational programs where we bring in a variety of different speakers to talk about a variety of different topics, usually related to the environment. And those are all made free and open to the public to attend. But we usually seize any opportunities we can to engage people and get our message across. We would often partner with the Franklin Soil and Water Conservation District to put on rain barrel workshops, and all attendees to those can actually receive a $50 voucher to go toward a rain barrel of their own. And we often table various events. We're at several farmers markets to just try and increase awareness of our own organization and all the different water quality issues.
Yes, and I mentioned the Bronzeville Agri Academy, and certainly that serves as our primary outreach arm for education. And I am sure that we will run it again during the winter, because that's the other thing that we say is there is something to do every month of the year with respect to the land and with respect to growing. Whether you're thinking about designing your garden or preparing the land or actually starting your seeds or putting them in, there's something to do every month. And so we see a year-round process of hosting the Bronzeville Agri Academy. Similarly, we try to share as much as possible the other work that's being done, particularly local. And so we have a number of people who are doing these online classes, or who have videos to share, or who have not as much, because again, we're observing social distancing, but the garden walkthroughs. And I know that we've done 2 so far, and we've put them on Facebook so that people have an opportunity to see the kinds of thing we're doing. And then we talk very specifically about not only successes, but challenges and failures that individuals have had, so that people can understand what they can do practically. It's one thing for me to, as I'm going to do this afternoon, talk about composting. It's another thing to actually see 2 different gardens where people are doing 2 different things to compost, and have them explain why each one works, because they're totally different situations. The last thing is that we try as much as possible to share reading. We really encourage people. There's some very good literature out here, and people should take the time to read some of the books that are being done on permaculture, on what we call civic agriculture. And I'm also a certified farmers market manager at the farmers market, because we really see moving from, learning about growing, and then involving it in a commercial space so that other people benefit from the fruit of your labor as well. So I'll stop there.
Awesome. Ways that Columbus Rec and Parks are kind of encouraging education surrounding the state of our environment. We are involving the community in a lot of our plans, specifically for our urban forestry master plan, as I already mentioned, but also different pollinator events, or our restoration of the whetstone pollinator prairie. More specifically, we were just featured in NRPA's blog, that's National Recreation and Parks Association blog, for the restoration of Whetstone Parks Prairie. And we're really trying to increase native species. A lot of our education has moved online due to COVID-19. And a lot of that looks like social media and the use of an app called iNaturalist. It's a free app. It's a great one. If you see an animal or a plant or an insect that you're interested in, you snap a picture of it, and it can give you the species and more information about that species, which is great. So we had a virtual Earth Day. We encourage people to get out into the parks in a safe, socially distant, mask-wearing way, and just find out what's in the parks, and more about those species. We'll actually have another one of those events here soon. Last year, we had our first annual pollinator field day at the Whetstone Prairie. And there was a lot of education piece there. We put out an educational sign at that prairie, but also at this field day, there were kids running around pretending to be bees. It's a family-friendly event, and learning more about pollination and what that looks like. So we'll be able to have that again this year, but we are holding it a little bit more limited. We're requiring pre-registration this year in order to make sure that we are staying safe with the state guidelines that we're adhering to. But there will still be a virtual education piece if that's something that's interesting for people. A BioBlitz, that's that iNaturalist piece. And we'll actually have volunteers collecting seed and weeding in the prairie as well. And our environmental planner will be there, as well as our outdoor recreation staff, and they have a lot of knowledge about why we're doing that, what species are here, why are they here. So that will continue, even though we're doing it a little bit more virtually and socially distant and all of the important things now. But lots of things online, especially in our outdoor recreation social media. There's information about like how to plant seeds and what time of the year is best, and those kinds of things can be found there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we've got maybe definitely one more question we can squeeze in. I'll go off the Q&A and we'll kind of go from the whole COVID social distance thing. How's that affecting your volunteering? Like, how long did that take to kind of combat and stuff?
Yeah, that's been a real drag, as you might imagine. So this year actually marks the 50th anniversary of the first Earth Day celebration. And so Green Columbus, another nonprofit organization here, had hopes of planting over 50,000 trees to celebrate that. And Flow was going to account for about 20,000 of those. And all the trees were already ordered and we received them, and then the virus hit. Everything started shutting down, everything started getting restricted. So we had to kind of figure out what to do with 20,000 trees and no people to plant them. But fortunately, the Preservation Parks of Delaware County actually took a bulk of those. They have some equipment that can actually plant them fairly efficiently. So they put them on a lot of their properties. And we did have some very small volunteer events to plant some within some of the project areas we intended to put them in. So it was there was some opportunity lost there for sure in terms of the number of trees we could have planted in our watershed, but it's kind of a dramatic example of the way we've been affected. We've continued holding volunteer events, especially for invasive species removal. Just because we don't need to count on a certain number of volunteers to show up to put trees in the ground, for example, but we have continued planting trees as well. And we will continue these things in the fall, but we're just holding these events in more limited numbers, following all the health and safety guidelines and everything. So our capacity has been diminished for sure.
We've had a similar experience. It really started off as an absolute disaster in the beginning, and we lost, a lot of the volunteers. And again, it was spring. It was time for planting. I mean, this is it. This is what we have to start. And people just didn't know what to do and how to do it. And besides, the first mandate was stay home. So people stayed home. And one or two of us came out and just kept the garden going, or the gardens going at that point. And then gradually, the state of Ohio did recognize agriculture as an essential service. And then along with that, community gardens, as long as they produce food. And so we were clearly within that ambit. And so we were able to, share that, but people still didn't quite trust it. So we still didn't get the volunteer response that we, were used to having. And then a number of people later on began to come out as the guidelines became clearer and people became more comfortable about working within the guidelines. And as I mentioned at the beginning, now we're getting small groups of people from different workplaces or even families that really want to do something. People have been, locked down and terrified one way or another, and people really want to contribute and make an addition to the community. And so we're getting a steady stream of small groups of volunteers, and so that has made a difference. And the same thing was true of the farmers market. I run the Bronzeville Growers Market, and we weren't even sure we were going to open. And given the different guidelines that were put forward, but gradually, we made a plan. We opened late, but we're going to stay open later through the month of September, and so hopefully it'll balance out in the end.
Great. And for Columbus Recreation and Parks, at first we shut down. We've been having conversations with the Department of Health in the mayor's office. As we got more guidelines and safety protocols established, we've been able to start holding volunteer events again. They look a lot different, but they're still outdoor and they're still in person for some cases. So we require masks. We require that volunteers do not share tools because we have a sanitized, disinfected pile when everybody shows up. We ask that everybody kind of choose their tool of the day. And then when that's done, we ask that they put them into a dirty pile so that they can be sanitized and left to air dry so that no one's touching them in that time period. We provide masks if people need them. We've got gloves. We just really want people to stay 6 feet apart in our parks as well. So we've been able to start holding landscaping events for our community centers, park beautification projects, as well as playground mulching. We want to make sure that kids stay safe on the playground, so you got to make sure that they've got a good cushion. So we've been able to hold those kinds of events as well as a little bit of litter cleanup, although we can't give out tools for that as of right now. But right now we're still planning on holding volunteer events through October. We offer them Tuesday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to noon, generally speaking. So those are still things that we can do.
Awesome. Well, we are unfortunately out of time. I wish we could hit all our questions, but for our attendees, this meeting will have been recorded, and I just, on behalf of all of Pay It Forward, I want to thank you guys, the panelists, so much for your time. Like, it means so much for you guys to be here. And yeah, our next panel is going to start up at 12:05, and it'll be healthcare and healthy lifestyles. And then all your info will be put in the chat, so contact and all that stuff. So thank you guys.
Thank you
for having us.